Let's talk about one of the most chilling maritime mysteries of all time. We're going back to 1948, to a ghost ship, a crew that was found literally frozen in terror, a sudden, massive explosion, and a secret that was swallowed by the sea, never to be seen again.
And this is where it all begins. This is the last message ever heard from the SS Orang Maiden, a terrifying final transmission in Morse code, right before the ship went completely silent. It's a message that pretty much promises unimaginable horror for anyone who finds them.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1948. We're in the Strait of Malacca, which is this incredibly busy shipping lane that runs between Malaysia and Indonesia. On what seems like a totally normal day, a single, frantic distress call just cuts through the airwaves.
And you got to think about how this message was sent. It wasn't a voice on a radio. It was Morse code. See, back in the 40s, this was your most reliable option at sea. It could cut through all kinds of static and interference that would just make a voice call impossible to understand. So when a message like this came through, you knew it was real and you took it very, very seriously.
So multiple ships pick up this call. At first, it seems like a pretty standard SOS. They need a doctor. But then, the message takes a really dark turn. The operator starts reporting that officers and crew members are dead. And after sending this position, he taps out those last two words, "I die." And then, nothing. Just complete silence.
The closest ship to that location happened to be an American merchant vessel, the Silver Star. The captain heard that terrifying call, and he didn't think twice. He immediately changed course and steamed full speed ahead toward those coordinates, getting his crew ready for whatever nightmare they were about to find. But what the crew of the Silver Star found was just weird. It was deeply unsettling. I mean, they were expecting to see a sinking wreck, maybe signs of a pirate attack, a fire, something. Instead, there's the Orang Medan, just floating perfectly, totally undamaged. No smoke, no signs of a fight, just this profound, creepy silence.
The captain of the Silver Star tried everything. He's on the loudspeaker, he's blasting the ship's horn, he's trying to raise them on the radio, and the only thing he gets back is the sound of the ocean. The ship just feels completely abandoned. At that point, he had no choice. He had to send a boarding party over to figure out what in the world was going on. The second the American sailors stepped onto the deck of the Orang Medan, two things hit them right away. First, this really strange, bone-deep cold, which made no sense in the tropical heat. And second, that same deafening, unnatural silence. And then, they saw the first body.
And this wasn't someone who had died peacefully. The man's face was a mask of pure, abject terror. His eyes were wide open, staring up at the sky. His mouth was gaping. His arms were literally thrown out in front of him, like he was trying to push away some unspeakable threat in his final moments.
As they moved through the ship, it was the same horrifying scene everywhere they looked. The entire crew was dead, and every single person was frozen with that same look of sheer terror. The captain was on the bridge, officers in their quarters, they even found the ship's dog, dead, snarling at something that wasn't there. But here's the kicker. There were no wounds, no blood, no sign of any kind of struggle. And in the radio room, there he was, the operator, slumped over his telegraph, his fingers still resting on the key.
Obviously shaken by what they'd seen, the boarding party makes a decision. They have to get this ship to the nearest port. It's the only way they're ever going to get answers about what happened to this crew. But the Orang Medan, well, it wasn't finished yet.
So just as they're getting the tow lines ready, smoke starts to curl up from the lower decks, specifically from cargo hold number 4. And within seconds, it's not just smoke. It's this thick, black, intensely hot plume. The fire was spreading way too fast.
The boarding party had no choice. They had to get off that ship, and fast. They scrambled back to their boat, and just as they got clear, the Orang Maiden was just ripped apart by a huge explosion. I mean, blown to pieces. It sank so fast, taking every single body and every last secret with it right to the bottom of the ocean. Not a single piece of evidence was ever recovered.
So with the ship itself completely gone, the mystery just got deeper. There was no wreck to investigate, no bodies to examine, nothing. All that was left was the incredible story told by the crew of the Silver Star. And that story has led to decades of theories. What could possibly have happened out there?
All right, so the first most logical question you have to ask is, did this ship even exist? I mean, you can't find it in Lloyd's Shipping Register, which is like the official encyclopedia of all merchant ships.
But you have to remember, this was right after World War II. It was actually pretty common for ships, especially ones involved in smuggling, to use fake names or just stay off the books entirely to avoid being detected.
This leads us to what is probably the most logical theory. The Orang Medan was smuggling something dangerous and very illegal. Maybe a combination of chemicals. Think about it. Something like potassium cyanide could have leaked and mixed with seawater, which would create a deadly gas. That would explain why everyone looked like they suffocated in terror. And then maybe there was a second, highly unstable chemical on board, like nitroglycerin. That would perfectly explain the sudden fire and the massive explosion that conveniently destroyed all the evidence.
And this story has just refused to die. Years later, a Dutch newspaper claimed it found former crewmen who confirmed, yeah, the ship was used for smuggling. Then, a mysterious letter detailing the whole incident somehow ends up at the CIA, and they kept it a secret for 45 years before finally declassifying it in 2003, which proves that, at the very least, major intelligence agencies were paying attention to this legend.
And that brings us to an even darker theory. What if the cargo wasn't just illegal chemicals? What if it was something far more sinister? Some people believe the ship was secretly moving materials from Japan's notorious Unit 731. That was their horrific biological warfare research unit. A leak of some kind of nerve agent or biological weapon could absolutely explain the quick, bizarre deaths, and it would certainly explain the extreme secrecy around the ship.
So in the end, we're left with nothing but questions. Was the Orang Medan just the victim of a tragic accident involving a smuggled cargo that went horribly wrong? Or was it part of some secret military operation, a conspiracy that was conveniently wiped off the map by that sudden explosion? The truth, it seems, is still down there, buried with the ship in the dark waters of the Strait of Malacca.